Zero, Callisto Protocol is coming out next month. It just went gold. So, with that being said, it looks like Callisto Protocol is starting to send their game to ratings boards across the world in order to get it rated for its eventual release. They did it with the ESRB. They did it with other ratings boards. I'm not even sure what the other ratings boards are, to be absolutely honest. But the one ratings board they had a problem with was the Cero board in Japan. It's called Cero, right?
Yep, CERO.
Thank you. Okay. Apparently, according to the developers of Callisto Protocol, they went to Japan, and Japan asked for numerous cuts, or else they would not release the game. Because of this, the developers are now canceling the game in Japan, citing that they want to keep their original vision of the game. Zero, what are your thoughts of the developers of Callisto Protocol deciding on not adapting their game, or not adapting their game for another audience to keep their original vision?
I mean, it's kind of an admirable thing. I get it. Just you want to kind of stick to your artistic vision, but a lot of people seem to kind of misunderstand how the Cero boards work, and especially if you're from the West, I get it, because it's not your ratings board. Many people may not know the standards of how the ratings boards in Japan work, and a lot of the misunderstanding I saw was just this. Well, that's people going, well, that's bullshit. How the hell can they not release it in Japan? Just they released Resident Evil 7 in Japan, and there's a Cero Z version, so why the hell can they not release Callisto Protocol in Japan? And really, where the misunderstanding comes from is the fact that in Japan there are laws, or not laws, but the Cero board has a hard policy that even for Cero Z, which is the highest rating, or the highest rating that can be sold in Japanese stores, so the best equivalency I could make, it would be a ESRB M for mature.
Mm-hmm.
That would be the equivalent of a Cero Z. Even though it is technically considered the highest marketable rating that you can put on a product to be sold in physical stores and digital stores, Cero has a hard policy against human dismemberment. So no decapitated heads, no lopped off fingers, no torsos being hacked off right at the middle. Just, you can't have any of that. And even in the Cero Z version of Resident Evil 7, there are significant changes in just how violent it is. One of the easiest examples to point to in the Cero Z version of Resident Evil 7 versus the Western version is in the beginning of the game where you're trudging through the guest house. Ethan opens up a fridge, and in the fridge there's a decapitated head in the fridge. Mm-hmm. And in the Cero Z version, the fridge is actually completely locked, and instead there's a photo kind of stuck to the fridge with a big red X over a person's head. And they're very very similar style changes throughout the board on the Cero Z version of Resident Evil 7 for Japan. So likely, I imagine that the folks over at Striking Distance Studios and Crafton had just said, yeah, we're not willing to make those kind of edits. We're not willing to compromise on our vision of this game. Just either you let us release it in Japan as a Cero Z or not, and because Cero is quite strict on how they do ratings, they probably just told them no dice, either comply or don't bother. So I presume that they were just like, okay, got it. In that case, we will not bother releasing it.
When I heard this news, this immediately reminded me of the video nasties. And what those are, there was a period of time, I believe in the 60s and 70s, where horror movies in England were starting to get banned because of the gratuitous gore and violence that were in the movies, or just the subject matter as well that were in it. And they developed a signature called video nasties. Cannibal Holocaust is an example of video nasty. Think movies like that are horror movies or dramas that deal with really gratuitous violence and gore. And they try to get them banned. And I think at certain points they still have banned those movies to a certain extent. But the thing that the video nasties thing did was they gained these movies more popularity by becoming banned and becoming like a public nuisance of sorts to prevent people from watching these movies. Because then all of a sudden people are like, wait a minute, why is this banned? I gotta see this. Why? What's so bad about it? And I think that's, to a certain extent, I think that's what they're trying to do here as well. They may well be just saying, hey, we're not compromising on our vision. Forget it. We're not going to release it. But if this doesn't sell well in the States, or I'll put it this way, or if it sells really well in the States, and they realize, oh man, if we sell this in Japan with those edits, we can make a killing. I would not be surprised if they turn around and just do the edits and then release the game at all. Just because what they can do right now is they can basically market their game like, here is the game that is banned in X country, and don't explain why, of course, but when people hear, oh, banned in a country, why? Why was that banned? Oh, is it that gratuitous and gory? Oh my god, I gotta see this. Like, you can get a lot of good marketing just on that alone and bump up your sales even more in the West. Because the West has no problem with violence, watching any type of violence, really, when it comes, except if it's when it's a dog or a kid, of course. But they'll have zero problem playing the game and buying it because it's a video nasty game, or it's a controversial game. It'll get more sales on that. So I wouldn't be surprised if they turn around in, let's say, 6 months when the sales dies and say, you know what, let's release it in Japan. Let's get some extra money. What do you think?
Yeah, on the marketing end, it almost kind of reminds me of the one ad campaign that they did for Dead Space, where they had a whole bunch of like grannies like watching some of the like player death scenes where Isaac is getting brutally murdered by like the necromorphs and everything.
Yeah.
And the commercial just has like a whole bunch of grannies like putting their hands over their eyes, like, oh my god, and stuff like that. And I think it kind of closed with the ad closes with a game so violent that even grandma doesn't like it, or whatever. So if they rolled a marketing campaign of a game so violent even Japan banned it, then you're probably going to get a lot of curious looky-loos going, okay, yeah, sure, I'll buy it. But it'll really be interesting if the sales end up meeting expectations, or if they end up failing to meet expectations, especially when you have to consider that the Dead Space reboot is right around the corner from the release of the Callisto Protocol. Mm-hmm. And if this game comes out as a dud, and a dud with the critics and everything, then the sales numbers may not be as promising as they may hope them to be. And at that point, I could see them quickly questioning themselves, going, all right, so do you think we might get a sales bump in Japan? I guess let's go ahead and make those Japan-only edits and start marking the shit out of this. So that'll be interesting to see where the sales numbers lie, especially if the game is critically beloved, and then by proxy, just players start to rant and rave on just how much they love the game.
Yeah. I mean, unless the edits are so egregious that it kind of ruins the game. Like, I remember Manhunt 2 had to have filters on it during certain kill sequences in order to be released in certain countries. I think that it was United States, correct? That they had to put those filters on? Yeah,
I think some of the execution kills in Manhunt 2 were considered just way too violent. That if Rockstar had decided to keep them, then the ESRB was going to give it an AO,
Yeah.
and that would have been a death sentence for that game. So if Rockstar's like, okay, fine, I guess we'll chain some shit up so we don't get docked with a AO rating on this thing.
Yeah. I think if it drastically changes the tone of the game or whatever they're doing in the game, then they won't do it. But otherwise, like I said, I see them suddenly coming back in 6 to 12 months saying, oh yeah, we're going to release it in a special Japanese version of the game. And there you go. Like, it would be pretty foolish of them to leave money off the table at this point. What I would find foolish is if they were to say, oh, Japan wants cuts, let's cut all of the versions then. That would have been ridiculous. That would have been like, that would be a bad move. But if Japan's asking for, hey, tone down the blood on this. Hey, maybe not show this sequence in this much of a close-up. Hey, maybe turn the camera away when this sequence is happening, but leave the face onto the character to signal what has just happened. Like, do those things. That's fine. That would still work. But if it's to drastically change the game, then I'd understand it. But otherwise, if it's just tone down the violence or the gore, I mean, do it. Like, I don't understand why not do it at that point, because there are movies and games that do get edited for the West too that we don't know about. Like, there are games that release here from other countries that, in order to release it in the US, not because they're legally told to, but because they know that audiences here would not want to watch it or would not appreciate it being seen in the film. So that does happen here. So it's not like it's really just a Japan thing. This happens here as well. So I don't get it. Like, I think this is a marketing ploy. They're not going to release it now, and then once they get all the sales, then they'll release the edited cut. That's my opinion. Thank you for listening to this podcast segment. The Capital Games podcast is done every week, and we post it on all your favorite podcast apps, as well as segments on YouTube. If you want to listen to another segment, you can listen to a new one right there on the screen. We also do a movie podcast called the Capital Games Movie Club. If you'd like, you can go ahead and click on that and see all the movies that we have reviewed from that point. Thank you for listening, and we hope to hear from you soon.